and welcome back to For His Kingdom with me, Nadia Olafir. And today is going to be just a basic book review on Jordan Peterson's book that I'm currently reading. And I am sitting comfortably reading and writing. It's a dream come true for me to do book reviews, especially someone like Jordan Peterson. And I must say, um, on my radio program of this week, I think it was Wednesday, I spoke about the heart of adventure and stretching your comfort zones. And this is one way in which I am attempting to stretch my mind, my comfort zone, and to think beyond the norm of um, of what I'm used to thinking, to get a new perspective on things, and to challenge my own existing ideas and perhaps some of this very intelligent man's thoughts, which is exactly where I find myself at the moment. Um, I wrote a first review, which is available on my Facebook page. But this is now my second review, and this one is centered around the idea of God as a temptation. Because that is what Jordan Peterson writes. He says that we can be tempted towards God. And I thought that's interesting, because God does not tempt us. That's what scripture says. And God tempts no one. No one. I think it's James 1:13 or something. Um, Do not say when you are tempted, do not say that God is the one who tempts you, because God tempts no one. That's what that scripture says. And I thought, but okay, how maybe it comes down to semantics and pragmatics, because I think we need to understand first, before I can argue against a position, I have to really understand what this position holds. So that's what I thought. I need to go and look at the pragmatics and semantics of um, the word temptation, making sure that I understand the position that I need to refute, um, so that I don't create a straw man and refute something that the Jordan Peterson didn't actually mean. Um, okay, so I went ahead and looked at what does temptation mean from scripture, and it's always important um, that we allow scripture to interpret scripture, and that is what I find is the essential key to understanding temptation, to understanding temptation biblically. Okay, so we have two root words for temptation. Okay, the first is the Greek word perasmos, and it's both a neutral and a negative word, or it can be negative or positive. Okay, depending on the context. So if we read, for example, in James 1:12, it says that we should count it joy when we encounter perasmos, trials, temptations. Here the word refers to a testing of the faith. So it's a positive context. It allows us to understand that the trial or the test, also called the temptation, um, is God's purpose in this situation. It's a positive, it's a refinement of our faith, not for our destruction, but the building up of our faith. Then in Matthew 4, verse 1, and I am sort of reading from my written review, just to streamline my own thoughts. It makes it easy for me that way. If you just talk, you go all over the show. So, okay, Matthew 4, verse 1, for example, Perasmos is used of Satan tempting Jesus in the desert. Okay, here it is used in the negative form. Okay, the intention of Satan is to lead Christ into destruction. Okay, the pragmatic meaning then depends on who is carrying out the temptation and why. Okay, in short, God allows this kind of tempting, the perasmos, and encourages us to endure through it. Okay, so let me just explain this. So, God allows for the testing of our faith, the which we now can use. We can use the generic or the English word temptation, or we can use the word perasmos and contextualize it, because the meaning of the word is derived from the use of the word, of how the word is used. So if Satan tempts, it's negative. If God tempts, it's positive. And so when God says in scripture that he tempts no one, he's using it in the negative form. He's saying, I don't negative tempt anyone, basically. But he does positively tempt us. And in that sense, we actually don't use temptation. To make sense of it for ourselves, we use test or trial and not temptation. And so the way that we've sort of divided this word to have the different contextual meanings in English is to have given it different wording. One we call temptation, and that becomes our negative connotation with Satan and judgment and destruction. The other one is testing and trials, and that is the way we use perasmos in relation to what God does. So perasmos in relation to what God does is testing and trial in our Bible. Perasmos in relation to what Satan does is temptation in our Bible. That's just sort of how we've managed to make sense of it for ourselves. Okay, so uh, in the desert, of course, Satan perasmos Jesus, and that is to lead Jesus to his destruction. So the meaning then depends on who is carrying out the temptation and why. Okay. A modern example of a word that we do this with is the word challenge. Now, you can have a challenge and it can be for your benefit. So, let's say it's challenging to exercise your muscles, like you challenge the weight of the weight challenges your strength, and through the challenging of your strength, I'm just trying to use this in a practical example, you become stronger, and then that's a positive context for challenge. But in a situation that results in failure, we could say you've been challenged outside of your ability. So you've been challenged to the point where your finances have been so challenging that you are bankrupt. You are facing insolvency. You've become bankrupt. So the challenge was resulted in your failure, in your destruction. Um, okay, or it can be a choice between right and wrong. You are facing a challenge where a decision needs to be made, and it's either going to be the right decision or the wrong decision. And we use the word challenge in all three these scenarios, but the word changes its meaning depending on how you use it. And that is what I'm saying about temptation. So we have perasmos, and then we have the next word, which is masa, which is a Hebrew word, of which the root word is nasa, for Nadia, nasa. But we're using the word masa, okay? And we read in Exodus 17:7. The place is called Massah because there Israel tested the Lord. Okay, so suddenly, contextually, the Israelites weren't just asking God for water. They were actually challenging God's faithfulness, provision, and presence. Okay, so Massa in this context becomes a symbol of human rebellion and distrust, not neutral at all, but it is a word that now, because of the way that it's been used, carries a sense of judgment and a destructive intent. So um, it's used in the negative then. So in Deuteronomy 8, verse 2, God tests or masa to reveal the human heart. Pragmatically, it becomes the divine evaluation. It's not a trap with a destructive intent, but rather God's desire to use it to reveal something. So masa, in the same sense as I have to read the word perasmos. Again, uh, can be used in the positive when God is using it, when God is carrying out the masa. Okay, but when humans do the masa, carry out the temptation, the testing, okay, it's associated with rebellion and judgment. And when Satan does the masa or perasmos, then it's associated with destruction and evil. Um, and so, yes, biblically, God does tempt, but the meaning of temptation changes depending on who is carrying it out and why. What is the intention behind it? So, in that sense, I I was sort of comforted. Okay, I'll let Jordan have this one. Can't really refute. I don't know exactly what he means by his understanding. Which understanding is he using of temptation? But I'll just give him the benefit of the doubt in the sense that we can use the positive form of temptation. So, can we be tempted towards God in the positive sense? Perhaps. Perhaps. It's not a hill I'm going to die on, and I'm definitely not dogmatic about it, but I'll allow it. I'll allow it. And I can move forward. Okay. Um, then let's see. I can move forward. Um, He points out further, yes, he points out further that we each want to be the hero of life's story, the hero of heroes, the king of kings. He says we want this so that we can experience the world from the position of the highest status, yes, the status of the Spirit of God, and experience the world through God's eyes. Okay, sure, yeah, I think so. The Bible agrees with JP's assessment and even elaborates that not only does man want to experience life from God's perspective, here's the key, but we want to be God. And so I take it a bit further. So, yes, Jordan says we want to experience life from God's perspective, and that is why we desire, and we'll bring this in a little bit in a moment, but that is why we desire to know good and evil is going to be his follow-up point. But let's just stop here for a moment and think, okay, we want to live life from God's perspective. But I say, more than just that, we actually want the position of God in our lives. Okay, so the Bible agrees with this view and then elaborates. Um, we desire to be the hero of heroes and the King of Kings. But this is a place reserved for Christ alone. It's this very position that Satan sought and still seeks to have. It's here that we find the root of the negative form of temptation, found in relation to Satan and humanity within Scripture. This is the start of all evil, the temptation in the Garden of Eden. We want to know good and evil for ourselves. We want to live to uphold and reach these self identified truths and values rather than to submit to what God calls good and evil, rather than to obey God. We desire to obey ourselves. Okay. So Jordan Peterson says we want to live life from God's perspective. We want to be the hero of heroes, the king of kings. Of course, our scripture teaches us that Jesus is this king of kings. He is the final, he's the ultimate hero. We could never have that place. It's reserved for him alone. And further to that, it's not just this innocent, oh, I want to be a hero of my life or in this world. I want to be great and remembered. And it's not just that, it's that we are actually desiring the place of Christ. And that is what we call rebellion. It's the seed of rebellion. I want what you have, and I'm going to come for it. And so we have to explore this idea further as Jordan Peterson takes this to the next level. He actually says that, and I wonder whether I should say that now or whether it's still coming up. Let me just read further, and then I'll expound on that. Okay. It's good and evil. Okay. We desire to obey ourselves. Okay. God said, do not. And by this, he gave us choice, the option to choose other than God. And we did just that. We want to control the story of life, to be the main character of our own life, to determine right and wrong and good and evil for ourselves. And right here, right at that place, is the answer to the question of why is there so much suffering in this world. You might think, hey, you weren't present in the Garden of Eden. You didn't do that. But you didn't have to be present in the Garden of Eden. Just reflect for a moment on your own life. How many times have you done opposite to what God calls right and wrong? How many times have you desired within yourself something that you know you shouldn't? Something that you know is not good, maybe even evil. And the guilt and the condemnation that we experience because we want those things. And that is the problem. The problem isn't that we sin and we don't enjoy our sin. The problem is that we desire things that are evil, things that God calls evil. But we don't want to call evil evil. We want to call evil good. We want to disagree with God. And that is the root of our rebellion. And we've all done it. It's not just Adam and Eve. We've all done that in our own lives. And so we do stand guilty in a very real practical sense. Okay, so we want to know good and evil for ourselves, and that's the answer to why there's evil. In a sense, we tore the world from the divine balance of God's goodness. Just like the stepsister in the story of Cinderella, she tears the string of pearls from Cinderella's neck, screaming, "It's mine, give it here." And the string tears apart and all the beautiful pearls fall to the ground. That's how we ripped the pearls from God's hand, shouting, "It's mine, it's my life, give it here." And when we sit in the ruins of it, we scream at God, shouting, "How could you allow this? How could you say that you are good when all my pearls are laying on the ground?" And that is what we do. Jordan goes further and makes this statement. In his effort to explain our desire to want to know good and evil, why do we desire this? Okay, he says, so he says, we want to understand good so that we can be good. And we want to know what evil is so that we can avoid being evil. And in this sense, he finds himself along the Pelagius in the 4th century, claiming that man is inherently good, able to be sinless, naturally drawn to goodness. Of course, I must disagree with Jordan on his position of inherent human goodness. I know that's a bold move because he's such a smart and intelligent person. Um, I think I swallowed a little difficult when I typed that sentence out. I disagree with Jordan Peterson. Who am I to disagree with such a brilliant mind? But I do. And in fact, it's not just me. I disagree based on scripture and what scripture teaches about the human desire, the human heart, the inherent nature of our humanity, shall we say. Let's see, Jesus. There's Jesus, whom even those who deny his divinity would hail as a good man or a teacher. Uh, Yet he says, "Why do you call me good? None is good but God." That's Mark 10:18. Wait, so none is good? None is good. Does Jesus mean we cannot do good? I ask. Because he says, even our best works are like filthy rags. But I don't think so. I don't think that's what he means. And here's why. Because context is key, like always. Good teacher, when he says, "Hey, good teacher," this man coming to Jesus saying, "Good teacher," and Jesus says, "Hey, no, why do you call me good?" In the way that he says "good teacher," this man is referring to Jesus's being, his humanity, not his skill as a teacher. He's not saying, "Oh, you're such a good teacher." He's calling him in essence the goodness, a good teacher. Teacher is his title, but good is his being in this context. And to that, Jesus responds saying, "No, none is good." What does that mean? None is good. None? Like no one? No human being is good? Did Jesus just say there are no such things as good people? Yeah, that's exactly what he says. Does he mean that we are incapable of doing good? No, that's not what he's saying. He's saying by our essence, by our very nature, our being, we're not good. We have been corrupted. Our desire is corrupt. Our desire is for evil and not for good. In another place, Scripture tells us, that's Ephesians 2:10, that we have been saved to do the good works that's been prepared for us. And so what we see is that when we do what God directs and leads us to do, then those works are good. So can we do good? Yes. Can we be good? It doesn't appear so, at least not outside of Christ. And the Pelagian view proponents would now bring up Cain and Abel. Cain needed a good sacrifice. God tells him, "Won't your sacrifice, won't you be accepted if you do what is good?" In referring to bringing the right sacrifice. Abel brought the right sacrifice, a lamb from his herd. I don't know what you call it now, but Abel brought a good sacrifice, the blood of a lamb, a sacrifice. Instead, Cain brought cursed food from cursed soil. And so Jesus now is the good offer that gives us goodness in him. What I'm saying is that we can do good, as God tells Cain, won't you be accepted if you do what is good? Yes, we can do good, but we can't be good outside of Christ. And let's look at the filthy rags reference. Scripture is related to salvation. It doesn't have to do with our ability to do good works, because remember, we've been saved to do good work prepared for us by God. So when we lead God, when we follow God, when he leads us, into those good works prepared for us, then we do good. But can we be good? No, not outside of Christ. We can't have our own inherent goodness. The filthy rag reference is related to salvation. Nothing we do can save us, not even our best efforts. In context, these good works are measured against the requirements for salvation. And in light of that requirements, our good works fall short, far short. It doesn't refer to whether or not we can do good, because we can, but we can't earn salvation through those good works. So, in summary, I disagree with Jordan Peterson's statement about inherent human goodness. I agree with Scripture that man's desire to know good and evil is so that we can determine our own morality outside of God and sidestep the cross on our way to the throne to sit next to Satan, who has done the exact same thing first before us, sidestepping God, going for his throne. He wants to be seated at the place of the Most High. Satan, wants the worship that belongs to God. And so our desire is to sidestep the cross too, sit next to Satan in the place of the Most High God. Of course, we don't realize that, but that's what Scripture teaches us about our inherent sinful nature. So, can we be tempted towards God, towards Jesus? I think Scripture agrees in the positive sense of the word temptation.